Hi.
Uh, okay, I was just thinking if the video is still words. Okay, it's good. Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, I can.
Can you hear me properly? Okay.
Yes, I.
Just making sure of it. How are you doing? Good.
I'm doing
This is
fine.
just how I start my debates. Like I don't actually just move into points and then like start doing things, but I just want to know like how you're doing and then.
Yeah, I understand.
So, did you have your first debate on call out? Was it your first debate here?
I've done two before this, so I've done a tournament debate as well. It's just like a
Yeah, I've
head-to-head thing.
watched your tournament debate. So that was your. I thought that was your first one.
That
Oh,
was my
okay,
second one.
okay, but I liked it. I mean, yeah, I voted for you.
Thanks.
I liked the debate. Yeah. Okay, so this is a very interesting topic. For me, I mean, for anyone else too. That the states should not allow individuals with dual citizenship to vote in either of their national elections unless they give up one of their citizenship status. So I think the idea mainly comes with what is associated with being a citizen. I think that's the main value that is attached, um, that we should be attaching to, like, for any individual, what does it actually mean to be a citizen? And then how is that role actually related in terms of election or maybe selecting a representative for the country, a country's political power, or anything like the head of the country, or maybe the lawmakers or anyone. So I think the main idea for me would come down to the responsibility that is associated with being a citizen, and then choosing someone or selecting a representative of the nation, of the communities, like who can actually lead the country for a better prospect. So yeah, so that's kind of like my idea. And then so I think because it just moving into the case further, I think no, there was a biblical injunction, I guess, which says like no one can serve two masters. And so it's just the same idea, because I think being a citizenship is definitely obtaining some certain legal rights. It is something that also comes with a political responsibility to a person. It's not something that's just like randomly assigned to you, like, hey, you are a citizen. It's something that comes with a lot of responsibilities. As I said, a political responsibilities. It definitely comes with certain legal rights as well. So when you are actually getting those kind of rights, and when you are getting those kind of obligations when you are getting those kind of prospects from a country, you definitely have a certain obligation um to serve, like, for the country as well. So there's a lot of problems that happens with it. I think there will be a divided national loyalty, and then which is one of the major problems here. Because in terms of, as I said, I'm not talking about it generally, like, that how a dual citizenship would matter or not, but majorly in terms of election, in terms of selecting a representative is what I'm focusing on. So a divided nationality would actually cause a problem on different levels, like we shall be explaining later. But um and yeah, so I think it's just about the dodging the obligation of citizenship by living elsewhere, or maybe, and then asserting the nationality of a distant state, like when it momentarily maybe gives you private benefits or something. So it's just that idea. Um, yep. So I think I'll just pass the mic to you and see what you have to say on this thing.
Yeah, I definitely get where you're coming from with the whole argument about loyalty. But I think there are some issues with the whole idea of just throwing away dual citizenship because of that. I've got a few arguments actually about just the practical elements of how dual citizenship encourages good for the country as well as for the individual. And I'm actually going to go into those first. I'll talk a little bit later about the whole loyalty point and why I don't think it's really a big concern. But I'm going to start out by talking about the benefits to the individuals that comes from having dual citizenship. Now, of course, of course, this in policy wouldn't be actually throwing away people's dual citizenship or not allowing people to have dual citizenship. But practically, it'd be encouraging people not to have dual citizenship, which is an issue for a number of reasons. Now, according to a journal article that was published in the journal Demography, in which I guess the author studied Latin Americans whose countries had recently adopted a dual citizenship policy. And he studied how they were naturalizing in the United States compared with other countries which did not allow dual citizenship. So basically, he took a sample where there was one country that allowed dual citizenship, so people would move to the United States and still be citizens of their country. And on the other hand, he studied what would happen when, in order to move to the United States and become a citizen and participate in the political process, you couldn't remain a citizen of the country to which you were born in. So he found that among the Latin Americans who were moving to the United States from countries with dual citizenship, with a high school diploma, they ended up being 2.5% richer, and they were much more attracted to move to the United States by the prospect of having dual citizenship. So then you also have the element of being connected to two different countries. Now, I have a cousin who's living in Germany right now. He's from the US and he has US citizenship, so he's living as an expatriate in Germany. But currently he's trying to get citizenship status, to be a dual citizen of both America and Slovenia, which it's a long story, but that would basically give him EU status. So it'd be much easier for him to live and work in Germany with that dual citizenship status. So it provides a benefit to both countries, both the individuals. And there is a trade-off involved. They have to pay, depending on the situation, they might have to pay taxes twice, both to the country in which they're living and to the country in which they hold dual citizenship. So there's a trade-off, but there's also a lot of benefits to the individuals. And that's something that I think we have to keep in mind, that there are benefits to these individuals when they're actually engaging in dual citizenship.
Okay. Okay. I definitely do agree that when you tell me that there are a lot of benefits that comes with having a dual citizenship, I definitely do agree that. And then I definitely have points to say that it could be problematic sometimes as well, while we see if in case a person is persecuted for a certain crime, like who actually will be maybe like, you know, under one under a certain law of one country, if in case the person is prosecuted, then what about like how the case is handled in terms of the other country? Oh, I'm not much clear on this, but you know, like there are a lot of complication that comes with it. And in fact, I think dual citizenship makes a lot of things complicated in terms of security clearance whenever you go something, or whenever like you go something, or wherever you maybe like yeah, you're actually doing something in a vulnerable position, like maybe a big decision maker or something. There's a lot of problem that comes with security clearance and everything when you are a dual citizenship, and it's a very long process, lengthy process, and even an expensive one if in case like you have to gain it. So I think so just giving that aside, I think there are a lot of benefits that comes with it, and there are definitely a lot of disbenefits as well that is attached to it. But in this debate, I necessarily my major focus would be to solve the political responsibility. And why dual citizenship comes as a problem to this factor. So, okay. I just have a few things here. Okay, let's just see in the Australian Parliament. The Parliament, I think the Constitution, the code on I don't really know. I think Section 44 mentions that any person who is actually obliged to a foreign state or foreign member and then has a certain kind of not just a fine connection, but like certain kind of like maybe citizenship or something towards the other connection, the person cannot be serving in the Parliament, or the person cannot be like serving as a decision maker or lawmaker in the Parliament. So you see why Australian government is doing that to the people like who are actually serving the political responsibility, and maybe why it is doing is that because it knows that there's definitely a political responsibility that comes with one person, and then if a person is playing a role of a decision maker, and the person definitely has to associate his connection to just one country, and then that is actually going to serve the best interest of the country, best interest of the policymakers, and the best interest of the community. So that is something that is very important in this debate itself. That's why I thought of this debate topic as well. So when you serve a political responsibility, it definitely comes down to are you going to serve in terms of the best interest of the country? Because as I said, maybe let's just see like how dual citizenship is occurring. So let's just see about Mexican people here. So Mexican people, they actually come to the United States as immigrants, and then maybe after a certain certain amount of years, then they actually obtain an U.S. citizenship. So now the problem is that if in case let's just say they are going to actually serve maybe in the election of Mexico, I think this would not necessarily serve in terms of their best interest, because if you see the reason they obtained the dual citizenship of America is that America gives them better benefits, or maybe in Mexico they had nothing to lose, it didn't have proper benefits, but now in America they're enjoying the greater benefits. And now if in case they're again going back to Mexico to just vote in election or something, they'll not pursue the best interest because they don't even care about it. So they will just be looking after the momentary benefit that comes with it. So they're not necessarily so much asserted to what the government is doing, or how the government is functioning in terms of policies and everything. So this actually will create a bigger conflict, because they'll not be serving in terms of the best interest. And I think that's one of the problems here as well. But I do definitely have a lot of in terms of what how two different values, or maybe how two different kind of having a dual citizens of two different kind of countries, or maybe two different values existing in two different countries would actually create a bigger conflict in terms of election. That will also be my case, but I'll just pass it on to you for now.
All right. Yeah, you bring up some interesting, a lot of interesting hypotheticals and concerns. I just don't know how often these things actually do play out. Now, I know that, for example, there are 28 foreign-born congressmen, governors, or cabinet members in the United States, some of whom likely have dual citizenship, because the United States does allow people to have dual citizenship and serve in government offices as well as vote. So currently you have a lot of people serving as lawmakers in the United States Congress, and we really haven't had any problems with that. Pretty much the only news that's come out about it is people calling maybe for lawmakers to announce the fact that they have dual citizenship, or sometimes somebody like Ted Cruz would come out and say, oh, I have Canadian citizenship, I'm going to go ahead and renounce that. Or Michelle Bachmann renounces Swiss citizenship or something like that. But there really isn't that much of actual results and actual examples of someone with the dual citizenship actually causing problems because of their dual citizenship regarding loyalty to their country. The main reason that we really do have dual citizenship at all is that it enables people to better engage in commerce across the world, and enables them to better their own lives by maybe moving to another country and establishing citizenship there.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens though when we do have that, when we allow dual citizenship, is that often actually, according to a book, let me find that book. Okay. Yeah, so the book came out a couple years ago called Democracy and Immigrant America. And they basically did a study on people getting involved in the American political process. And they actually found that immigrants coming from places who allowed dual citizenship got more involved in the American political process than people who came from countries that didn't. So basically, they were more likely to integrate into the American political process when they had dual citizenship with another country than if they had to give up their citizenship to move to America. Countries with dual citizenship, when a citizen can hold their citizenship to two nations at once, they're much more likely to become naturalized in that country, according to that demography article I read earlier. And so that means that they're much more likely to become full citizens of the United States than when they have to live in the United States, but they can't hold their position. They can't actually become a citizen of the United States without giving up their citizenship to another nation. So, well, what I'm really saying there, what the impact of all that is is that there really isn't any empirical or any example of where this becomes a problem. And in fact, we see that there's a lot of people currently serving in the US and voting in the US where this doesn't seem to be a problem. In fact, we see that people are more likely to become citizens, actually engage in the political process, and immigrate to other countries when they have the opportunity to carry their dual citizenship over.
Okay. All right. So I think, I mean, I don't know if I really like heard that correct, but you told that the people who had dual citizenship had like more involvement in the political process in the United States. Yeah.
Yes, when they held dual citizenship with
Okay.
another nation, and that when they moved to the United States.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So so I think just taking the same case as an example, if in case we see, let's just say there's maybe an Iranian person like who holds a dual citizenship and who is actually in the power, like in the United States, who is maybe serving, or maybe who's actually actively involved in the United States. And so the question here is not just about his involvement in the United States politics, but the question is also about the involvement of him in the Iranian politics. Like, you know, the question here is when we are talking about the dual thing, I think the question is not just about how he's doing it one country, because like that's how the debate has actually come forward. That, you know, come on the I think on the same area, because when it says that if in case like, you know, you're going to maybe you have dual citizenship and then like you're actually going to vote for one of the national elections, then I cannot do it because I have two citizenships. So I think if in case we are comparing the scenario, I think we should definitely compare how much is the involvement in both of the areas. So if in case, so as I told you before as well, that a person could actually obtain a dual citizenship because they have nothing to lose in their country. Sometimes, like, the cases actually are this, because Mexican people, most people are maybe coming to America because they know that they have better benefits to opt in America, and then that's why they do it. And I know that so I'm from Nepal, so I know that many Nepali people actually come to America. But like for the families or something, for their friends or anything, and then they stay there. So they stay here. So I know it's because like they know that America has a better living standard than Nepal, so they would definitely love to stay here. But the question is that now, if in case they are doing it, now they come here, they are actively involved in the American political process and everything. Now, would they be allowed to get back to Nepal, maybe in the time of election or anything, and then just vote for anyone, you know, whoever they like for anything? So now their political involvement in one of the countries would actually take away maybe just the idea that it not be serving the best interest in the election. So if in case I go to Nepal and I'm doing it, I know that I'm more involved in the political process of America now. So there would definitely be a lot of value clashes, which I'll be talking about in a while. But just saying this, like, you know, I'm more involved in the political process of America, but then now I go to Nepal and then I just want my right to vote. Like, you know, it is not actually me serving my political responsibility to the country I hold a citizenship status of. And so that's one problem here. And secondly, okay, so I think the concept of dual citizenship is problematic in terms of, especially as I said, like getting just into election here, it's problematic both symbolically and practically. And so, you know, so I think, okay, just a second, I have a thing to say here. Okay, where was it? I just lost the thing. But the thing is that I think sorry about that. If you can go ahead in case you have something to say on this.
Well, I think when you're talking about just saying that somebody could both vote in both elections and not be really looking out for the best interests of the country. Well, the reality is people are going to generally have some idea. Generally, they're going to vote in their self-interest. They're going to vote for what they think is best for them. Like, people really go to the polls what's best for America as a whole. without really thinking, well, this is going to be what's best for me as part of that. And just the reality of it is that we're going to vote based on what we think is in our best interest. So I don't see it being substantially different. People, if they want to move to America and be an expatriate, they're going to vote for policies that make it easier for them to move to America and be an expatriate. If they want to move to Nepal and be an expatriate, they're going to do the same in America. It's just, I don't see that their citizenship itself necessarily causes them to, I guess, look out specially for the citizenship of for the country to which they have that dual citizenship. I think people are generally going to vote in their self-interest. They're not going to have this transcendent ideal of, oh, I'm a citizen of this country, so I must favor policies in my country that are going to help that country. That's just not really the way that people actually vote.
Okay. All right. So I think, talking about the self-interest, I think there would be a big conflict in self-interest because you are, let's say you are citizens of two different countries, of two different policies, of two different laws and rules and regulations. I know that if in case it's just like, if in case it's the same kind of country, I know it would make a less difference, but so it would make a difference. But there could be countries like which you're having citizenships of, and then it could be like two different countries. I mean, just taking an example. So now, the person's decision, in terms of an election, or in terms of the politics, in terms of the involvement of the person in the politics, would change very differently if in case those two ideas are going together. So, if in case, okay, I'm living in America right now, so I have certain ideas about the political system. Now, maybe because I'm here, I'm more involved here. Now, my idea of thinking, or maybe my way of thinking in terms of politics would be very different because of the policies I'm facing, because of the laws I should actually go through. But in Nepal now, it's entirely not entirely, but it's very different to what it is here. So now, because I am more involved here now, whenever I'm getting into an election or something, there are high chances that my decision would be something that would actually not be, I don't know, not be like, on the best interest thing, because I'm being served in a different country, in a different policy, and then that would actually bring a lot of different changes in terms of what I think of politics, or what I think of political engagement, or what I think of civic society. So I think that would make a lot of difference in terms of how I'm going to make a decision in another country in terms of elections, because my thought will be divided now. And I think it's entirely different. So let's just say if in case Democrats are like maybe doing good in America, that does not necessarily mean that Democrats are doing very good in the other country as well. But so it's just the idea that there will be a conflict in terms of policies, in terms of the decision making, because I'll be serving, if in case I'll have those two different ideas together. I think that'll be a big conflict, because my decision will definitely be depending upon what I think of, and that would definitely not, that would sometimes not actually go along with the context we have, and context matters a lot. But because I'm in a different context now, and then I might apply the same thing I'm learning now to the context that is entirely different to what is in the United States, and that'll actually be a problem. That'll actually create a conflict of interest, I would say. Yep, I'll just pass it back to you.
I think what your concerns tend to center on potentiality of somebody having a different interest in another nation. But I don't think that's unique to people who are dual citizens. Like, as I said earlier, people who are expatriates, people who want to become an expatriate more exactly, are naturally going to favor policies that make it easier for them to be an expatriate in whichever country they want to be an expatriate to. That's just the way it works, because people are driven by their self-interest in their decisions, whether political or otherwise. Now, the reality is that even if, just to use an example, I'm very interested in European politics. I don't live in Europe, but yeah, I pay attention to them. So I'm always reading about Theresa May and Angela Merkel and all the German election and French election, and I have my opinions on them. Like, I know what I would do if I was in France or Germany to make these decisions, and it's not really driven by what I think. I've never considered my loyalty to America being a driving factor in what I'm choosing for British or French politics. That's just not the way it works. I consider what's going to be best for Britain or France or the country that I'm actually talking about, because that's what I'm considering. I'd imagine that if I was a dual citizen of either of those countries and I was going to vote in their election, I would be concerned with, is Macron or Le Pen going to be a better choice for the French presidency for France? No, and that's just the way it is. I think most people, when they're considering elections, are going to be voting based on really what they believe in. And what they believe in is, well, this is where it gets a little complicated. Now, some of the research I've read on how people vote says it basically comes down to people vote based on what they believe people like them will vote. People want to identify as groups. And this is getting a little off topic, but what I'm saying here is that Republicans vote for policies that they believe other Republicans or conservatives are going to vote for and support. Democrats do the same for Democrats. And so whether you're in a US or another country, you're going to be voting for stuff that generally applies to your own political philosophy. Like Macron, Merkel, they're much closer to my political philosophy than the people they were running against. So I support them because of that. So I don't think that your identity, your loyalty to one nation or another is going to really impact your decisions in politics as much as your political philosophy, which really isn't going to change that much country to country.
Okay. All right. So, let me just think of it. I was thinking of something. Okay. Okay. So, just giving an example of maybe Donald Trump. The thing is, like, as an outsider, like I was back in Nepal when the election was happening. So as an outsider, like me, my friends, like a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, like, like, what kind of person is actually holding the candidacy for the president? And then it's like, it's so silly that, like, Americans are doing it and everything. But so, like, I think it's, and maybe, like, if in case I was, let's just see, like, if in case I was supposed to be maybe an American citizen. So technically, if you see, like, Donald Trump was presenting or maybe like proposing things that would actually benefit maybe American citizens to a certain extent, maybe putting immigrants in disadvantage, but still, like, if you see, like, from one perspective, like, he was proposing things that would actually maybe that could have bettered American citizens' life or something, like, So, but as an outsider, like, when I was seeing this, I definitely, for me, my idea was like, what's going to be, okay, I just lost my track. But the thing is that when you talked about, like, how you thought that what's going to be better for France, like, I think it makes a difference between what's going to be better for France and what's going to be better for you in France. Like, I think, so I think there's a lot of difference that comes in terms of making a decision as an outsider and as a person who is actually in it. So there's actually a term here. What I had was what was that? The term was okay, a passive observer and an active member. Like, it was a kind of thing. And I think it definitely makes a lot of difference when you are actually believing that the certain rules or policies that's actually going to happen in a country is actually going to affect you as a citizen. And I think unless you have that, I'd not say fear, but unless you have that concept in your mind, I think the decision are actually more. I don't know. The decision, I don't think, are so much. There's definitely a lot of thought put into it, but still, I think it definitely is something different, because no matter like you can decide what could be better for France, like you I mean you're not going to actually face what's going to happen in it, or even though if in case it's not happening good, like you're not going to face the consequences. And I think that makes a lot that makes a lot of difference. And
Mhm.
hmm. So yep, I think the idea would be about divided national loyalty. And then I think I mean for me it's not just about like, hey, I'm like, I love America, or maybe I love Nepal better or anything. It's not something like that, but I think it's more about creating a real and apparent conflict of interest. Because when people think of policies, maybe I don't know, that relate to my second country, and then I'm impending a decision on my first country in terms of the policies that relate to my second country, or anything like, in terms of election or anything. I think that will hinder a lot of my that will yeah actually hinder a lot of um political area of any country I'm voting on. And I think uh that's one problem here. And then yeah, and I think like, for any taking any citizenship, I know that when you take an oath, like, I mean, I would not get into here, but just saying it, like, that it says that I hereby declare, like, that I entirely and absolutely renounce all association, or maybe, you know anything with the other country, or maybe a foreign country, even my citizen and anything. So I think this is something that comes with citizenship. But I know that it's not necessarily existing, because I mean people have dual citizenship and everything, even though this is what the oath actually says. But there's this principle of one person and one country. And then citizenship it's something that aligns with political responsibility, that aligns with legal rights. And when you're making a decision, it's not just for you, it's actually going to affect the community. And then you have a bigger burden on what you are deciding. So because of on that area, I think they should actually give up their citizen status if in case they want to vote. Yep. Let's just pass on the mic to you.
Okay. So I'm going to clear up a little thing I said earlier about how people vote. I think it may have sounded almost contradictory. Now, I think there are two main reasons that somebody would vote. First of all, you could vote nakedly in your own self-interest, which is just, this policy is going to cost me $45 a year. I'm going to vote against that. Or you can vote in favor, or what people tend to do is vote, as I said earlier, along with their group, along with their political philosophy. So somebody might support Donald Trump because his policies would better them financially, or I guess legally, or something like that. Or they could vote because they think his policies are going to be in best interest of their country, because that's what their political philosophy, that's what their group favors. So either way, I don't see any place for, this is my citizenship obligation here. I don't see that either way someone's citizenship, except in extremely rare cases in which it actually does involve their self-interest as a citizen, is going to play an interest. I don't know that any kind of situation of loyalty, any kind of citizenship loyalty, is really ever going to be on somebody's mind when they're choosing a policy. Now they'll make just decisions based on their own self-interest, or on their interest in furthering their group goals. But I don't think they're going to make decisions based on their interest as a loyal citizen of that other country. That's just really not how people make decisions when they're voting. And then secondly, you said earlier that this whole idea of one person, one country. Now, the problem I see with that is that we're living in an increasingly
Yeah.
globalized world where people are, and corporations are crossing borders in ways that they've never done before. So when you're refusing to allow dual citizenship, you're putting a ton of big roadblocks in front of that, which means that you're ultimately harming your wealth potential and handicapping countries and citizens. Now, this is a big deal because when countries don't allow dual citizenship, or when they heavily discourage it in the way that you're suggesting, that means that a lot of countries, what happens practically is that people aren't going to want to go and become dual citizens of that country. And that means that people aren't going to be able to bring in the kind of wealth or the kind of resources that many countries, including developing countries, really need. So Yeah, it might be one thing. I think this whole one person, one country thing, but in the world we're living in now, that's going to cause more harm for the countries than it's going to cause actual benefits to them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's why I told you, like, I just want to state it, like, just to like, say it, because I think the idea of not having dual citizenship would definitely, it's just not even existing right now. Most of the people have it. I mean, I know people like who have it. So it's just a concept that's totally out of range right now. But coming down to the debate. So, okay. So, you talked about how a person would not necessarily incorporate the idea of loyalty in terms of voting, but would rather like vote on the self-interest. I mean, I do agree to that. But the problem is not for in terms of people here. The problem is for the country here. So, which we are accounting for. So, I mean, if in case a person like, wants to, I know that person would not even decide, like, if in case I'm loyal more to maybe America or maybe Nepal, but it's the country that is actually suffering whatever decision that is being made. It's the country who's actually on the stake here. So the country is the stakeholder and not the person itself, whoever is voting. So you see, there's a difference in the way we see it in this case. Why? And yeah, so I think that's slightly different than what you actually said. Um, okay. So talking about I thought that I'd have like actually talked a bit about how maybe giving up this citizen status would actually maybe lead to better decision, or like, because I think that's the whole point of like why we are doing this, why. So is it actually going to make any difference, like, is it actually going to make any difference? And so yeah, for me, like, I'll just clarify a few points and then I'll be done, because like we just have now 6 minutes. So firstly, I think my idea still, which is that, so it definitely becomes an issue of loyalty, because if in case you are, and there's a thing about nationality and citizenship. So nationality is more about a concept, like, so it's more like a concept. So I could say, I'm I just don't know how to say it, but it's just more about the concept. But citizenship definitely comes with many legal rights. It comes with a political responsibility. So that's why you can be a citizenship of the country. Like, so if in case like maybe I'm getting married to an American guy, let's see. So that could also be one way of getting citizenship. But when I get a citizenship, I definitely should align to a political responsibility I have, and I should definitely, because I'm taking in some legal rights that the country is giving me, I should align to those political responsibilities I have. And then that's um, so that's the thing. So it's just about serving two different political responsibilities together would actually be a conflict of interest, as I said, because I could think of one policy very differently in this country, and then I could think of the same policy very differently in the other country. And then that should actually create a conflict in interest, I would say, and that'll actually be a major problem here. And then I told you like about how the Australian Parliament actually does not allow the the people in the parliament to actually gain two different citizenship. They will ask you to like either renounce it or maybe get over the role of the in the parliament, because I think that's the whole point. That's the whole point, that if in case you are having like a foreign association with something, like, even though you're not involved in it, you see, like, even though they're not involved in it, I think that's still a problem. So maybe a person like who's actually active in Australian parliament, but still like is not so active in the country he's a citizenship of, I think it's still a problem, because um yeah, because it's more about the idea of when you and especially because those people serve more political responsibility, like, and it's why it's even a bigger issue there. So the people in the parliament, they're supposed to be reflective of the communities they're elected to represent, but if in case they have like a strong involvement in the other country, and then the community conflict are going to come here, like the community he's representing, like here in the communities that exist in the other part of the world or the country, like it would be different, and then that will actually bring a lot of differences. So yep, so I think those are my kind of like main ideas, but I think it's a very interesting topic to think of. I mean, I have not debated the exact thing, but I have debated like a similar kind of topic before, maybe 2 years ago or so. But I think it's very interesting. So yep, I'll just pass on the mic to you now.
All right. Yeah, so I think what this has come down to is just the idea of the idea of the loyalty and the responsibility inherent in citizenship. Now, I think that there are a couple of issues though that that are going to be important when you're making decisions. So the first is to recognize that when you're taking a step like this, you're very clearly discouraging anyone from becoming a dual citizen. Because one of the key elements of citizenship in just about any country, any republic in the world, is that you get to participate in the political process. And so when you forbid someone from participating in the political process, what you end up happening is that you discourage them from becoming a dual citizen, and therefore, in many cases, from coming to this country at all. Now, I've already brought up some statistics about how people who have a dual citizenship option are much more likely to fully naturalize and become part of the country. They're likely to become more involved in the political process than they would otherwise. And they're also more likely to come to just to come to the country. When you have a dual citizenship option, you end up pulling in more skilled and educated immigrants as well. And I also brought up the fact that with globalization becoming a big issue, dual citizenship is a major advantage in many cases. And so when you're taking away that option or strongly discouraging that option, what have happened is that you're harming the wealth potential and handicapping countries. So I think when you're making policy decisions like this, you have to recognize that regardless of the loyalty potential, you're talking about very real consequences for very real people. And so then the second issue about just the whole loyalty concern at all. And I brought up earlier that there are currently 28 foreign-born congressmen, governors, or cabinet members in the U.S., and surely some of those people have dual citizenship. They aren't required to publish that, so we don't know for sure. But in all likelihood, they do have dual citizenship, at least some of them. Now, what I don't see there is the idea that these people are making worse decisions because of their dual citizenship, or that they're being affected in some way by doing this, by this loyalty involved in citizenship. Now, we talked a little bit, especially toward the middle of the debate, about the whole idea of why people vote. And so I brought up the idea that it's basically either for self-interest or because they have some political philosophy of this group they belong to that they believe they should support. And in neither case do I see a room for the inherent loyalty involved in citizenship. Now, I think that in general, you're either going to be voting on your self-interest, in which point your citizenship is just related to the rules that may affect you as a citizen or something. But either way, that's going to be an issue. And then also the idea of political group philosophy. That's not going to be an issue for citizenship really at all, I don't see. People care about elections in countries which they may never live because they care about the advance of their political philosophy. And so that's going to happen. People are going to vote for their political philosophy, whether or not they have that dual citizenship. So I don't see the dual citizenship loyalty problem really being a problem at all, especially when we stack it up against the very real benefits that dual citizenship can provide. I don't think we should take such a drastic step as arguing that people shouldn't be allowed or should be heavily discouraged from having dual citizenship. I think it's a very helpful tool in a globalized age, and I don't think it's something that we should discourage people from using and taking advantage of.
Okay, so just one thing. I think when you are talking about this topic, it's not necessarily like telling people that not so it's actually asking people to not take two political responsibilities together. So that's the whole point of this. to not take two political responsibilities together, and that would actually create area of conflict. But it was great debating you. Thank